Hello, everyone. Welcome you all to our Science Cafe tonight, featuring our project of From Debris to Art. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. So, without further ado, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Emily Burke. I am the Donor Relations Officer here at MDI BL. I was a student here back in the 90s, but then ended up pursuing a career in art history and have a real personal fascination with this intersection of art and science. So when I got to join MDI BL as a staff member a little over a year ago, I was really thrilled to be a partner with the Art Meets Science program. Tonight with me, we have Anna Farrell, who manages the Community Environmental Health Lab here at MDI-BL. She coordinates the NIH-funded All About Arsenic project and various water quality monitoring projects in the area. She also works to monitor and restore eelgrass in Frenchman Bay and is part of the amazing AnecData.org team here at MDI-BL that you'll be hearing a bit more about later on. I'm really sorry to say that our artist, Mariah Reading, will not be able to join us today. We are really sad that she won't be able to be here, but we were able to record a video with her where she'll share some new updates to the project and a little bit of her process. So I apologize for that late notice, but we really hope that you'll stay with us and enjoy some other aspects of the project. Mariah is an eco artist and a strong advocate for the existence, preservation, and accessibility of the national parks. She grew up and was born in Bangor, Maine. She received her visual arts degree at Bowdoin College. And it was the 2016 National Park Centennial Project, Recycled Landscapes, which brought her attention to the need of preserving and protecting the environment. That was also a project that caught my eye when last year she was an Acadia National Park artist in residence. So you'll see that she has quite a number of pieces of artwork that were completed and feature this area, and especially even here in Salisbury Cove, which is pretty fantastic. So I wanted to also point out that this project would not have been possible without the support of the Onion Foundation, for which we were very grateful and very glad they could join us here tonight as well to hear an update. This is very much a project that is still in process, and we are really excited to show what we have accomplished so far and a little peek at what we have coming in the future. We started this project, started talking about it 9 months ago in January, pre-pandemic, and we certainly really had to pivot when that pandemic hit. We had this wonderful history of the Art Meets Science program and wanted to be able to continue, even with COVID-19 restrictions, a community engagement program where art and science could meet not only here at the lab, but also in our community. We were also very cognizant of the fact that for many of us, more than ever, we needed that cathartic process of making art. It was important to us that we made that also an option for as many community members as we could. So I wanted to introduce Anna and have her walk us all a little bit through the evolution of the project. While I had the great pleasure of connecting Anna and Mariah months ago, they really were the drivers of this project, and it was an honor to help them through that process. So, Anna.
Thank you, Emily. So yeah, like Emily said, we started talking about the project back in January, and we originally conceived of it as a way to bring attention to the amount of debris that scientific research produces. A lot of our monitoring projects actually use a lot of plastic, single-use plastic to complete our monitoring, but we wanted it to be more accessible to the community, like Emily was saying earlier. And so we kind of spitballed a lot of ideas and came up with this idea of how everyone can go outside, and usually you encounter a piece of trash in your environment, which is not great, but it's just a fact. And so, but what can you do with the debris that you find beyond picking it up and putting it in the trash? How does it make you feel? Do you actually notice it in the environment? Are you angry about it? Are you sad about it? And what do you see behind it? What it can become? And so you'll see in Mariah's videos, she just makes the art so accessible. And one of my favorite quotes she says is, "You're literally making the world more beautiful by taking these pieces of trash and then making them into art." So that was a little bit about the evolution of the process.
Great. Thank you. And one of the other items I wanted to mention was something that we came back to again and again was connecting our students and our community members to that natural world. Both Mariah and I grew up in Bangor, Maine. We both attended Bowdoin. It was something that connected us right off the bat, but it was also a conversation that we had about growing up in a town, a pretty privileged town, less than an hour from the coast, and that we knew countless people, kids in our class, people on our street, who had not ever seen the ocean, who had not made it that far, had not connected to an aspect which is such kind of a defining characteristic of our state. And it was something that we talked about, that we wanted to help our community members, help our students connect to that natural world that is right outside our doorstep. So it was great as well to get to know Anna's work. And I wanted to start off, one of our main goals with this project was community engagement, particularly once schools had gone virtual, once our public programming had moved to Zoom. How could we meet our constituents where they were? One of the easiest ways was through video, was through harnessing YouTube as an accessible program. So we worked with a fantastic videographer who's also joining us tonight, Maddie Johnson, to work on two separate videos so far that featured Anna's and Mariah's work. So we're going to share those right now. And again, forgive me if it is glitchy. We are going to do our best to get through it.
I'm Anna Farrell, and I am the manager of the Community Environmental Health Lab at MDI Biological Laboratory. Most people think of pollution as visible things that you pick up like on the side of the road, or maybe like a lobster buoy on the shore, or rope. But the community lab deals with a lot of unseen pollution, like microplastics and bacteria and red tide and arsenic and other contaminants in drinking water. So the major theme that tie all our projects together is water, and we deal with freshwater and marine water. And the other unifying theme is that we engage community members in all the work that we do. The Department of Marine Resources Harmful Algal Bloom Volunteer Monitoring Program is one of the programs that we are involved with. And once a week we go out to 2 sites, one here at the lab and one in Bar Harbor, and we collect water samples and analyze them for red tide species like Alexandrium, Sunichia, and Dinophyces, which can all cause human health issues. The shellfish that we eat filter feed the phytoplankton, and the toxins concentrate in their tissues, and then when we eat the shellfish we can get sick. So this program is kind of the front line for monitoring what's in the water and what could be in the shellfish. So each week when we go out to sample for phytoplankton, we take this big bucket of supplies out with us, and we're looking for things like the temperature, the salinity, weather conditions, and then we filter 10 liters of water through this tiny, it's a 20 micron filter, so you can't even imagine how small that is. And everything smaller than 20 microns flows through, and we capture everything larger than that, which is what we take back to the lab to look at under the microscope. One of the important indicators of water health is dissolved oxygen, which is the, as the name suggests, the amount of oxygen that is in the water available for fish and other organisms to breathe. We test it using this chemical kit, and you take a whole water sample, so water that hasn't been, it's just straight from the ocean. After you add a series of chemicals to the water, it gives you a number in parts per million, and that's the level of dissolved oxygen that's in the water. And so you want it within a specific range. Low dissolved oxygen can be an indicator that you've had an algal bloom, and the algae has used up all the available oxygen in the water, leading to what's called anoxia, when there's no available oxygen for the other organisms, and then they have these massive die-offs. Phytoplankton need specific nutrients to grow and to bloom. So a bloom is when they kind of reproduce like crazy, and there's a lot of them, and it's a very natural thing. They rise and fall in populations. If there are too many phytoplankton, then we get those anoxic conditions. So for the Maine Healthy Beaches program, we go out weekly and collect water samples from the beaches, and we're looking for Enterococcus bacteria, which is a fecal indicator bacteria, which comes from mammals and indicates the presence of poop, basically. And that can be from, say, beavers up in the watershed, or more often than not, it's related to a dog that might have pooped on the beach and the owner didn't clean up after it, or a child with a leaky diaper that's swimming in the ocean. So even small little things like that are important to take care of. All the data we collect is communicated back to the public. So Maine Healthy Beaches has a public website that you can check for beach conditions to see how the levels of bacteria are and whether or not it's safe to swim there. The phytoplankton data is used to make decisions about whether to close the shellfish area or not, preventing people from consuming shellfish harvested from certain areas that might have this toxin in them. We also store a lot of our data publicly on this website called AnecData.org that we actually developed here in the Community Environmental Health Lab. So Kate Bailey is our systems developer and co-creator of AnecData.org. AnecData morphed into a citizen science website that's used all over the world now for projects from litter cleanups and water quality projects and watershed projects to art projects and sea level rise projects. So it just, all sorts of things are on that website. We've created an art meets science project called From Debris to Art, and we welcome you to find a piece of trash on your beach or in the park or wherever you might be, it doesn't matter where it's from, and turn it into a piece of art. And so you can watch Mariah's process and how she turns trash into art, and you can mimic what she does, or you can come up with something completely new. And we invite you to upload your creations to the From Debris to Art project in AnecData.org and showcase what you've come up with and see what everyone else has come up with too.
So thank you, Anna, for making that happen. That was our first video to really help our public connect to what Anna and the Community Health Lab does. When we first got Anna and Mariah together, Mariah really wanted to shadow Anna's work and see what kinds of human-made debris she was finding in her work, but I was also really interested in the idea of waste that comes from scientific research. So there were some wonderful conversations there. Anna also helped Mariah connect with the landscape here at Salisbury Cove. and helped to create this next video that we'll share to show a little bit of the process that Mariah undertook in making artwork here at MDIBL, and also to lay bare that artistic process of how do you actually take a piece of debris and create some of the amazing artwork that Mariah has done.
Trash. The softy glove. Gonna paint the water bottle today. Ooh, look how you can kind of see through towards the islands. So I'm gonna show you how to prepare it for painting. So I brought with me some recycled water, just using a hot, extra hot McCormick bottle. Not sure if that's salsa or whatever, but easy glass bottle, and I just recycle water, use it over and over again, and it's easy to transport. All right, I have my paint palette I painted the other day and then sealed it in this foil, and it's actually still wet. Boop, boop, boop. So it preserves the paint for a little bit longer so you don't waste paint. Got some brushes for painting. All right, so this is kind of my setup, just sitting around. This is my view, not bad. Found the water bottle just down there. I'm gonna use white to prime it, but for painting, I like to stick to basically primary colors. So red, yellow, we got a cool blue and a warm blue. Sometimes I use this yellow ochre color, and then green if you're feeling sassy, but you don't have to, and then white. So I like to stick to the basics because that's what all the colors are based around. And I'm going to start by sanding this water bottle. That way the paint adheres to it a lot more easily. A lot of things that you find marine debris related are slick and slippery, hard to grasp onto. So you want to, by sanding the items, it provides a surface that the paint can adhere to a little bit easier, so things don't chip off later. It looks like the beach itself, just kind of tumbling around there, has worn it down pretty good, but you know, it's always good to sand the nooks and crannies. So this is also a good place to think about what orientation you want your object to be. Do you want it to be this way, this way, this way, sideways? I'm probably leaning towards this way, and I really like to leave my bottle painted on one side and then unpainted on the other so that you can tell that it's a water bottle, but that's totally up to you. That choice is yours. All right, so now I'm gonna start priming. And I start priming with white, just so there's a base color. Boop, boop. Just go, and just go for it. Kind of goop it on. And depending on the texture of the object, you can do 1 layer of priming or 2 or 3 or 4, however many you need. Usually I like to stick to 1 prime and then I lay a ground, which I'll show you next. All right, so I painted my first layer. You can kind of see how you can see through it a little bit. So that's why it's easy or a good idea to maybe do a few layers. Or you can keep 1 layer if you kind of like that effect, being able to see through it. Yay! So the paint has just about dried. It's a muggy day out, so it's slow drying. But the next step is to think about a ground color. And a ground color is the color that you lay down before you start painting the landscape for real, or painting whatever you'd like for real. So usually what I do is I paint a base color that is the opposite of the color that I'm trying to paint, the majority that I'm trying to paint. So in this case, the majority of the landscape, seascape, is blue. So I'm going to lay a base color that is orange. If you look on the color wheel, blue and orange are opposite of each other. And this allows the orange to kind of pop through the painting and kind of ignites it almost. So I'm going to use this yellow ochre color and crimson red. So yellow and red is good. Mix in some other colors if you want. And that'll make the landscape look like it's moving, because it is. Look at those waves moving. The wind is whistling. This isn't a stagnant landscape. It is constantly moving, and we want to show that in our paintings. Just kind of mix those colors up, then add them on. See, the whites blend in a little, and that's okay. This is going to make a solid base for the painting we're about to create. Yay! So after you get to this point, you are free to do whatever you choose. I like to paint the horizon first. So that's that line first, and then you draw or paint the farthest thing in the distance, the background, work towards the middle ground, and then finally, the most detailed things are the things right in front of us, the foreground. And that's how I make my paintings. I'm drawn to landscapes, but you do not have to limit yourself to that. You can paint animals or people or something abstract, something that you're inspired by the coast, and then just go for it. You are literally making the world more beautiful by painting to protect it.
So we were really excited to have Mariah right there on Star Point and painting, a place that is so dear to our hearts here at MDI BL. And the other part of our project, beyond community engagement, laying bare Mariah's process, encouraging others to create art from human-made debris that they find, was and providing the time and space for Mariah to create some art based on debris that she found on our campus. So she was able to do that with the water bottle. She also did this last video, which I'll share, and I apologize for the quality. We are again in process, and we are going to be sharing some other materials at the end. These 2 pieces that you'll see here, we will have on display at MDIBL at the termination of our project, but for right now, they're still in progress. So it's a bit of a sneak peek you're getting here as Mariah talks about 2 pieces that she created here this summer. Hi everyone, I'm Mariah Reading. I'm an eco artist based in Maine. I'm in Seal Harbor right now. So I find a bunch of trash and paint on it. And I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there with you right now, but I wanted to share a little bit of my process and the things that I've been able to do this summer. The projects that I was able to do was on a flip-flop that I found in Acadia National Park, just a single flip-flop. It's always funny to think about kind of where the other flip-flop is, where the pair is, and shoes themselves kind of tell a story of our human footprint, because somebody walked in those shoes, somebody lived in those shoes. You know, what kind of life did they lead? How did that shoe end up there? I always like to kind of think about the backstory behind the trash that I found. But I kayaked out. I love kayaking, so I brought the flip-flop out with me as I kayaked to Folly Island, which is on the west side of MDI, and just brought all my paints in my kayak with me, and there's a little beach, so I just set up shop and painted the different layers, you know, starting with the background first. I like to paint the farthest thing in the background first, and then kind of work my way, kind of building the layers of the cake, because that's how we see the landscape in reality. And it was funny because I was focused on the mountains of Acadia. That was going to kind of bring together the flip-flop piece, as you can see from my progress shot. I had the mountains painted in, and that was going to be the aligning piece. And then, of course, as I finished up, the sun set. So the light got lower and a little bit duller, and then this huge fog bank came in and, you know, clouded my view of the mountains themselves. But I kind of like moments like that when I'm painting outside. It shows the movement and the change that's always happening when we're out in the landscape, whether big or small, from climate change just to from like leaves rustling. Things are always moving and shifting around us. Yay. So this next painting that I worked on was actually a personal piece of trash that I found, or that's mine. It's a paintbrush that I used to paint another one of my paintings, this big aquaculture box that I found washed up on the beach this winter that I painted. So it was cracked and leaking styrofoam. So I used this paintbrush to paint that piece, but then throughout the process it, you know, came across some wear and tear, so it wasn't going to be usable for other projects. So I wanted to paint a painting on the paintbrush, kind of give it this second life. That's very meta, but I like meta meta things. Yeah, so I started. I was camping out on John Island, and I started painting as the sun rose. So I love the golden hours, but the sun shifts so quickly. So it's really hard to kind of capture the moment in like only 45 minutes, because all of a sudden the sun's up here as opposed to down there. So I photographed a few images, kind of walking through that process, first trying to capture, that's actually Folly Island in the distance that I'm painting initially, and kind of blocking in the various colors and shapes of the island. And notice too, as the progress photos go, how the lighting changes and how the tide starts to move out. That happens rapidly too. So yeah, adding those pinks from the Cadillac Mountain granite was really fun. And then by this third photo, the sun had kind of risen to a point where the water started to pick up. The sun's rays made the waves start to form, so it was less of a glassy reflection of the island. And you've got more of that blue color as opposed to kind of the pinks and rosy colors from the sunrise. So I painted for probably about 2 hours one morning.
And this fourth photo is the alignment, the kind of final product of the shifts and movements that I made as the sun and the colors changed. You can see the seaweed starting to come out in different ways. And then the final photo is actually the following morning. So I camped on the island one more night and then woke up at sunrise again to see if I could capture a similar sunrise or similar lighting to what I had originally painted. So again, things were different. A lot of the times when I'm painting, I'm going to return an object like months later from when I originally took the photo or started painting. So this is kind of a mini example of that. Yeah, and there's not it's not a perfect alignment, but again, things are constantly moving and changing. And it was beautiful to see those colors again. It's my favorite time of day. And then this last photo here is just my setup. It's super simple. I just like to carry out small tubes of primary colors with me because that's where all the other colors are formed from, so we don't need any extras. Just a little to-go palette, some recycled water and like an old recycled can or salsa tube, whatever you need. And that's kind of it, a washcloth if you want, but it's just a super easy setup. Find a nice slab of granite and go for it.
So we were so excited to see what had worked for Mariah throughout this process and what she was able to create. And the other kind of arm of this project was encouraging community members, whether students, teachers, just people in the area and beyond, to participate as well. Not only to find human-made debris, but to share that process with us and hopefully create some artwork. So Anna, I'd love for you to talk a bit about using AnecData, this MDI creation, and I can click through as you let me know.
Sure. So let me back up a little bit and just tell you about the history of AnecData itself. And Jane Disney, who's on this call too. So she helped create AnecData. She's the director of the Community Environmental Health Lab. And she's been collecting citizen science and collecting data and engaging citizens in science for her whole career. And it's very inspiring. And she and our systems developer, Kate Bailey, recognized that there needed to be this online platform where anybody could go to download data, to contribute data. And so we created it in 2014, I think, for an eelgrass restoration project. And it has since morphed into a much larger platform, hosting projects like From Debris to Art. And so this is the homepage of that project. And this is that's a personal profile that if you sign up for a profile, then this will be your homepage. And so Emily's going to go to her projects, and she's joined the From Debris to Art one. And it kind of explains what the project is, what the goal of it is, what you do to participate, and some instructions on how to participate. And then you can see all the other observations and data that have been collected. So we encourage people to upload a photograph of their piece of art. And you can see some of Mariah's there at the bottom with the scuba mask and the lobster. Yeah, so she's a phenomenal artist with the rope there. And then we've had some other community contributions as well, which are showcased in the other images, as well as a poem. So it doesn't have to be a photo. Any sort of creative urge you have. And then if you can click through the gallery, and hopefully we'll be uploading a lot more images. And then associated with each image is this metadata. And so this talks a little bit about where you found the object, what materials you used to create it, what inspired you, and when and where you collected it. So there's this geographic piece that's attached to every observation that's uploaded to AnecData. And so you can kind of begin to build a map and see patterns of debris or just where people are. And so we're hoping to get people from anywhere to join, not just here on the coast.
Absolutely. So I'm going to come back here and say very much though that this is still a project in process, and I've been really very much excited that in the last couple of weeks I've connected with a few other organizations who are getting started at joining us in this project. You know, our hope was that putting this project online would increase its accessibility, but there are still limits to participation. And certainly there have been a lot of lessons that we have learned through this project, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But certainly participation was one of them. I mean, the elephant in the room here is we're in the midst of a pandemic. Our children are just started getting back at school, most in a virtual format, and that is a challenge. It's a challenge for students, it's a challenge for teachers. It's really difficult to add to your curriculum when you're still trying to get each child engaged on a daily basis. But we were really excited to hear from one school in particular last week, the South Carolina School for the Blind. A teacher contacted me and asked if they could participate. They now have 10 students signed up. These are special education students who are blind, who are going out into the trails around their school. It's a residential school, and collecting trash and creating art. And they are going to be very excited to share their creations in another month or so. So keep an eye on AnecData. Because so far what I've seen from their questions and their engagement, it's really going to be a delightful result in the end. Also wanted to ask Maddie Johnson, who I mentioned earlier, who is our amazing videographer, who also had the opportunity and serving as a role as a teacher to talk about this project for their students and engage them as well. So Maddie, would you mind sharing your experience a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My internet connection's unstable, so if I freeze, I apologize. But yeah, I work for an organization called Nature Links. It's a Blue Hill-based nonprofit, and so I'm the lead teacher there, and we work with young adults with intellectual disabilities who are largely isolated from their communities, and we really try to provide that link that plugs them into community projects and introduces them to interesting, people in the community, artists, farmers, scientists. So again, because of the pandemic, we can't really ask people to get out of their homes and into the community. So we've really been trying to bring people to us through our Zoom classes. So we actually did a workshop where we all watched Mariah's video. And it was a really awesome experience. Basically, Mariah just has such an engaging personality. And there's like so clearly in that video an enthusiasm for her work and her mission, but also like a real chilled out approach to her process. No sort of, she's not in a hurry or all about the perfection of it. So it's really accessible for anybody to enter into this project in that way. And what I noticed with my students was it was just so valuable to approach these huge topics of pollution or climate change or marine plastics, which are overwhelming and can feel like we have no power to change them. But through the creative process that Mariah showed us, right, that you have some sense of agency. So my students did all sorts of things, but they were all very transformative pieces that were like describing the world that they want to see. So we had a great experience with it, and we have yet to upload to AnecData, but we're planning to. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. That is fantastic. I think you hit the nail on the head. Is not only are we trying to connect people to these issues, but also to empower all of us to feel some sense of not only ownership of the issue, but a sense that we can make a difference, that we do have some agency in these issues on the local level and on the national level. Thank you. I wanted to touch on a few other things that you said. You know, we had really talked about wanting to make this project as accessible as possible. And I agree, Mariah has a way about her that really connects with children and adults alike, that makes us all feel like we are artists, that we all have this natural ability. And we had identified early on the challenges of people having artistic tools at their disposal to create art. We put together 20 packages of art supplies, and through a community partner, we're able to distribute them. The majority of them went to a systematically oppressed community in our own area in Perry, Maine, where there is a Native American population. They used those art supplies, they created artwork, and yet they weren't able to participate because there were varying issues of not being able to take photographs. They didn't have the technology to capture the artwork, and we didn't have the technology in place or internet accessibility to utilize AnecData. So it was for us starting off and really wanting to try to bridge some of those gaps, standing back and being like, okay, we still have a real ways to go here, that we are continually learning. And I know, Anna, that's something that you have talked about a bit in terms of providing multiple entry points for people and as great a sense of agency as possible. And I know you had one graphic you wanted to share here that I wanted to make sure we got to as well. If you wanted to talk us through it.
Definitely. So Jane created this graphic in response to our Eelgrass Restoration project, which engaged community members in restoring eelgrass, which is a seagrass that it's up and down both coasts and all around the world, but it's disappearing. And so we had a years-long effort to restore it. And what we discovered is that people could enter this eelgrass project cycle at any point. They didn't just have to collect data quality, so they could help with designing the restoration methods. We had several iterations of that. They could help with the field trials, so harvesting plants, like physically being in the water. They could help with monitoring water quality and the progress of the eelgrass, and then analyzing and assessing the functions of the habitat. So traditionally, I think we think of citizen science as a single entry point where people collect data and then that's it. But actually, there are all these other avenues for people to participate, and there's a wider term for that. It's community-based participatory research. And it's involved with the environmental justice movement as well, because one of the issues of science is that it kind of comes down from on high, and people in communities that are affected by environmental degradation or poor air quality or poor water quality, they don't really get to have a say in the design of the project or in what happens afterwards, and they don't get to see what comes out of the research. And so community-based participatory research aims to bring them into the entire research process at any point, from designing the research project to interacting with their communities and presenting the data. And so we've started to integrate this model into the other research projects that we do in the community lab, like the All About Arsenic project. So that's just a little bit about how we're trying to bring science into communities and make it more accessible to anybody who wants to participate.
Thank you. And I think that is kind of our greatest lesson learned, is that stepping back and thinking at all steps of the process, how can we make it accessible? How can we meet our community where they are, and allowing everybody to engage on whatever level they are able to. So we are still a project in process. We can't wait to share with you what comes next. I'd also like this to serve as a call to action. Please join us. We were out on Seal Harbor Beach yesterday, my daughter and I, finding debris. We brought it home and we made something from it. I'd encourage you to do the same. It doesn't have to be on the coast. It can be out in the woods. It can be along the side of the road. We would love for you to participate in whichever way that you can. We'd encourage you to use AnecData, to check out our project website, and to stay tuned for updates as they come. And we'd love to take any questions that you may have, feedback. You can utilize the chat, or I think Jerry is kind of moderating and will be asking us any questions that have come up so far.
I am, Emily. Thank you. I have a question for you, actually. I'm just curious. You mentioned that the project is still ongoing, and I'm curious what's next. What are the sort of next phases of this project?
Well, we are still just getting connected with our local teachers and students, and it is a great hope of ours that we will be able to have some more local involvement through our existing partnerships with area schools. It was wonderful to hear, for example, that South Carolina School of the Blind actually came to know about our project through a listserv on citizen science that Anna is a part of, that had promoted this project. So their reach is, while the reach is national or international, we'd still really like to get a more local involvement as well. Mariah is still finishing up some personal artwork inspired by this project that we will put not only on AnecData, but also hope to share in at MDIBL's gallery space and online as well. So I'm excited to see what comes. The flip-flop and the paintbrush are just kind of a sneak peek at this point.
Yeah, I think her placement of the finished pieces in the environment is just such a cool idea, and just a wonderful way to integrate and, you know, appreciate the beauty of where these pieces are found. It's really a fascinating approach. We do have a couple of other questions. One is, you know, about collecting trash during COVID-19, and just wondering if there are concerns or, you know, maintaining safety while doing that, and just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Absolutely. It's something we did talk quite a lot about, you know, even in the creation of those videos. You could see at some points when there were more than one person in a room, or Mariah was using her own iPhone when she had Maddie there as a videographer. They were wearing masks and staying at 6 feet. It has certainly, the pandemic has really touched every aspect of this project, and trash collection more so than anything. We had a long discussion with Mariah about what was safe, what was not safe, how do we encourage people to stay safe. In my own experience with my kids going out and collecting, it was something we talked about. I will say we wore gloves, we wore masks, and I picked up more than a dozen masks over the course of 2 visits to Hunters Beach and Seal Harbor Beach. That certainly the pandemic in and of itself is creating a whole nother kind of round of human-made debris. I'll also say that just collecting debris has its own inherent dangers. We were really upset to step out of the parking lot and find discarded hypodermic needles on the edge of Acadia. So I think the more you open your eyes, the more you look around, you'll see things that you always want to be very careful about handling or picking up, and you know, discarding them appropriately and in a very safe way when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. One other question is whether or not you think there'll be any art that's made from scientific waste, right? That was one of the pieces that, one of the original objectives maybe, or conversations that got this project started.
Yeah, Anna, did you want to talk a little bit about the scientific waste question?
Sure. Yeah, I have not created my piece of art yet, so I would like to use something that we produced in our lab this summer. We have a lot of these specimen containers, and you saw a little bit these bacteria wells that light up under UV light. So there's some pretty cool opportunities there. So yes, I would definitely like to do that.
That's cool. One of the comments in the chat is that one of the participants said when she taught 7th grade that a homework project was to make cell models out of plastic debris. So a great way of using, but yeah, I think even we've, you know, in the past when we've had artists in residence here at MDIBL, a couple of them have used elements of debris from various scientific projects in their work. So it'll be fun to see what you come up with, and we'll look for those pictures on AnecData. That's great. Any other questions? Let's say we have one comment here that a group of art students from Taiwan actually made popsicles from wastewater. I'm not sure I'd want to eat them. There's a link there in the chat if you're interested.
Oh, very cool. That's interesting.
Terrific.
Well, one of the other things that I found really fascinating were two of our kind of community participants who had focused on the use of sea glass and also on old shipbuilding and driftwood materials that were found on the beach. And it was really interesting to have a conversation amongst us as well about how there are aspects of human debris that have really in a way become a part of our natural landscape already. Sea glass and driftwood too, like you'll see a lot of bricks or the old ceramic plates as well that we find a lot of, and we collect them, we love them, we think they're beautiful, we store them, we display them. And I'd never before stopped to think about the fact that that was actually debris at a certain point in time before the ocean took it in another direction.
Very true. I think that is an interesting way to think about it, that the natural world has a tendency to turn things into a different form, right? Sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Lots of great comments in the chat about how great this project is, and I've seen comments about the fact that it should be in every school curriculum, which would be fun to think about. But certainly some, additional benefits. I mean, particularly during a time of COVID-19 and the pandemic, we're fortunate to live in a fairly rural part of the world. I mean, certainly sometimes it doesn't feel that way during July and August, but there are often, places where you can just sort of be outside and enjoy nature, and it certainly has a restorative effect, and picking up trash is an added bonus, I guess, to ensure the continuation of and preservation of this beautiful place that we live. So thanks to you both, Emily and Anna, for, updating us, sharing where you are with this project. I think it's an exciting continuation of MDIBL's art and science focus, and something that we hope will continue. And again, our thanks to the Onion Foundation for supporting this, because it was the first time we've ever undertaken a project like this, and so in many ways a real pilot for us as we figure out how to continue to engage the community in this conversation about art and science. So thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great and a lot of fun, and I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to kind of pursue that. It was wonderful for all of us. So thank you.